last 2,000 years, many opposed property in the family. The only ones that have survived are those who support property and money. Or again, and here it becomes positively messianic, to understand our civilization and most appreciate that the extended order, capitalism, resulted not from human designs or intentions, but spontaneously. No, spontaneous combustion, the beginning of life, the revelation of the divine, surely not. And yet, quote again, perhaps what many people mean in speaking of God is just personification of those values that kept their community alive. And since these values are claimed to be those of the market, the implication, even the conclusion, must be that God is a free marketeer. These are their words, not mine. Perhaps the misprinted dollar bills that came out a few decades ago, bearing the legend, "In gold we trust," should have been allowed to remain. I should point out that I can make the same points using different quotes, and indeed I have done so, because their literature, the free marketeer literature, abounds with such confidence. Now, supporters of the free market, it seems to me from that, are far more deterministic, in fact, than socialists. To draw on a theological comparison from my time many decades ago as a Methodist, if Marx were Wesley, then Hayek would be Calvin. Truly a preacher of economic predestination. And alas, far from being our salvation, capitalism is closer to original sin. John has written a few books, one of which exposes the breathtaking extent of corruption in the EC. Socialists wouldn't quarrel with that. In my early days in the Socialist Party, I debated at Swansea with a Euro MP, Mr. David, and remember being staggered by that degree of corruption. By nation states, by conglomerates, by small businesses and individual entrepreneurs. Amidst the myriad examples of scams and frauds, cheating, double dealing and exploitation, falsely labelling livers, hearts and lungs as prime cuts of beef, unloading goods in one country, then smuggling it to another for extra subsidies, false customs declarations, forged customs stamps, etc., etc. Appalling waste, food mountains, wine lakes. Nobody ever tell me where these are.
We'll make you one.
The only things in short supply were, of course, the ethics of enterprise. But the book of John's that most interests me is one with the intriguing title, The Ethics of the Marketplace. I haven't read it yet, as my own ethics won't let me spend the 50 quid I need to buy it. And sadly, it is not available in my village library. I wonder if he would agree, however, that the idea of a free market and free individuals operating without state interference depends upon a radical change of consciousness, if it is intended to create the level of ethical awareness needed to generate a fair and caring society within capitalism. The libertarian ideal depends, just as much as the socialist one, on transformed attitudes, like as well as economic determination, of course. Like ourselves, they are postulating a system that at the moment does not exist. Perhaps, like us, is hoping that as the idea takes hold and is properly understood, the necessary transformation will miraculously take place. But the task he faces is far more daunting than that of the Socialist Party, for in his New Jerusalem there is a San Andreas fault, and it is the abiding abiding need, or should that be the eternal need to make profit? Perhaps by that time, of course, monopolists would have become so enlightened that they spurned the abuse of their financial power. But then if they were so enlightened, how on earth would they have become monopolists in the first place? And the concepts of the free market cannot allow for any mechanisms to restrict such power accumulating within private enterprise. For would not any intervention on any worthwhile scale to prevent that abuse of power risk upsetting everything that John believes in? And what of the moral responsibility to meet the needs of those who fall outside of the market's generous arm? Calling it charity, as some free marketeers of my acquaintance do, hardly solves the problem. Well, here is the answer, supplied by one free marketeer, Hayek again, I'm afraid. Mere existence cannot confer a right or moral claim on anyone against any other. As part of the system of common rules that assist humankind to grow and multiply, not even all existing lives have a moral claim to preservation. Not all existing lives have a moral claim to preservation. That is a stunning thing to say. You see now, you begin to see a darker side of things, grimmer but more realistic view of the free market economy. How free is a discharged mental patient forced to live in a cardboard box to play the markets and make a profit? Another libertarian provided the answer. Really bad, really cheap housing provided by sordid Dickensian entrepreneurs would be downright desirable. You bet. Is this a view widely shared amongst market economists? If so, please spare us all from capitalist philanthropy, a process which generally applies a little makeup to someone whose face they ground into the dust. The ethics of the marketplace were very well disguised when the brilliant shop I helped to run in Baker Street was driven out of business in the reign of self-acclaimed free marketeer Margaret Thatcher. A wonderful shop with a great history. Pitt the Younger lived there. The boss's dad, without him, Vaughan Williams wouldn't have been known. Mrs. Vaughan Williams always came to the shop because of that. A brilliantly accomplished and expertise staff in books and printing and stationery and music and toys and games. And a fantastic customer base. It went broke. It went broke because an organisation called Pentos suddenly appeared on the scene. In that period, in the 80s, an astonishing statistic, 95% of all retail shops were owned by just 4 groups. And contrary to popular opinion, it was not the business rates that drove the shops to close. It was the free market rents. It was the free market rents. Our rent, when Pentos went in a few doors down, when they'd taken over Ryman's, and paid several millions premium, and over £1 million a year rent for the privilege, we were asked to put our rent up from 25 million to 1,000, sorry. But it could have been, it won't be long. 25,000 to 65,000 annually. We could not afford it. So we took our shop round the corner to our printing works,